today that says navigating change for financial wellness?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you for confirming that. So I'll introduce myself really quick. I'm Marla Sofer, and I've got over 20 years of experience in financial services. I've given a couple of talks. We're trying to do these regular financial wellness conversations with Witty every month. And every month we talk about a slightly different topic. And so I come from a background having been a private banker. I served ultra high net worth people that live in South and Latin America. That was a long time ago. In 2006, I went to JP Morgan, and my clients were very large asset managers, the likes of BlackRock or Vanguard or Fidelity. Those were the types of clients I served. And then I went to BlackRock and I worked for 5 years covering relationships with banks, data providers, and index licensors like the S&P 500, so S&P, MSCI, Bloomberg has quite a lot of indices. And then I got into fintech, and I've been in fintech since 2015, and I've run partnerships at a lot of different companies. I also worked at Microsoft for 2 years, focusing on financial services strategy, until I realized there was a huge gap in our industry. Financial services, even the word services, implies that it is serving, it is giving somebody something of value. Yet financial services knows very little about its customers. And that's what Nomi's all about. We actually empower the users, the customers, to know themselves so they know what financial services they need and build confidence and clarity in their own path to financial wellness and in their journeys through their lives. So that's a very short snippet about Nomi and my background. I want to just talk a little bit about our goals for today, and I can do a little bit of a review. So last time with Witty, we spoke about taking a step toward mastering your money mindset and shifting money to a tool versus a goal. We also had a session where we talked about financial joy and recognizing what actually brings you joy. So you use your money as a tool for those things that brings you joy. And in our last session last month, we talked a lot about values. And we talked about how do you actually recognize the relationship between your money and your values in the way that you spend money, and maybe you value travel or spending time with family, or maybe you just value shopping and having new things. And also in the way that you invest your money. And when you think about the relationships you're making, who are the partners that you're working with as you invest your money? Which companies are you investing with? So that was our session last time. And today we're going to be talking all about change and behavior change. So one of the amazing opportunities I've had in launching Nomi is a partnership with a brilliant academic. I don't think she's on here, but even if she was, I would still call her a brilliant academic, named Megan Lertz. And she is a PhD and professor at Kansas State and at Columbia. And she does a lot of learning sessions for financial planners and advisors to understand how do you get to know your customers and solve their problems. Now, her life work is on the science of change and the science of financial behavior change. How do I get somebody to make an investment? Or how do I, as an individual, get more control over my spending, get a little bit more aligned to a budget that I've planned for myself, help me achieve my goals? And how do I get into investments that feel right for me? So all of that relates to your behavior change. So let's just set a little bit of a context for our conversation. Please feel free to use the chat, raise your hand, interrupt me. This can be and should be as interactive as possible. This is a session for you, and hopefully you come away with some insights about the process of your own journey and your own change through your life so that you start to use money more as a tool to help you achieve the goals that you are setting out for. So our agenda, we're going to clarify goals. And in your brain, everyone's got different goals. You're going to start thinking about what goals do I have that I want to think about during the rest of this talk. And when I think about change toward those goals, let's make sure we have an anchor to kick us off. So what are the goals? Then we'll learn about the stages of behavior change, figuring out what stage you're in, and we'll learn how do we get you to progress through the stages of change so that you actually achieve your goals. And as always, we'll figure out how do we leverage this beautiful network to help you on your journey? How do we find the power of community? So let me raise this picture of a wellness wheel. Some of you may be familiar with it, some not, doesn't matter. But in the wellness industry, they talk about 8 dimensions of wellness. And so I want to just bring this up as you think about your goals and take a little glance around the 8 dimensions of wellness. And we'll just take a moment to kind of stop whatever you were doing before this call. This is time for you to really consider what area of your life do you want to focus on for the next 50 minutes. So look around. It can be one, you can have one goal that overlaps into several dimensions. That's okay. We can take a moment and see if anyone wants to share out a goal that came to mind. It can be private, you can share it. But let's just take 1 second. Think about a goal and see if this helps you spark an idea. Anyone want to share? Can be any type of goal. Even though this is a financial wellness talk, there's really no rules. Yes,
Physical, exercising regularly, getting it on the schedule.
that's a great one. Anyone else have a goal you want to talk to or think about as we talk about change?
Save, invest, and travel. Somebody put in the chat. Martha.
Awesome. Thank you for reading the chat. I have 2 windows overlapping and I couldn't see the chat.
Nope.
Awesome. Okay. Well, let's move on. Keep that goal in mind for the entire rest of our session. I think it's important for you as you think about change, you always have to be figuring out, well, why? Why are you making this change? And so the change has to align to some benefit for you. So again, we've spoken about money as a tool, and we spoke about joy, and we talked about what brings you joy. Today, we're going to talk about goals. And this image, I think that was you, Daphne, who said you want to kind of focus on your physical goals and exercise more regularly. And this image conveys, it's like the perfect image of a goal. And what came to mind for me when I saw this image were different words: accomplishment, competition, success, attainment. Anyone have any other like inspiring words when you see this and you think of the word goal? What does this convey to you?
Hard work paying off.
Hard work paying off is an excellent, excellent thing. Anyone else?
Success was put in the chat. Winning, happiness,
Success, winning, yeah.
finishing the goal.
Thank you, David. I love that. I love happiness, joy, like the reason, like what happens to you internally, like your brain synapses start firing, you're experiencing joy, you're experiencing success, accomplishment, all of those things. I'm just seeing, oh, yes. That's okay. I'm going to continue on. Unfortunately, I had to refresh my Canva presentation, and it looks like this didn't load. Give me just 1 second. I'll go ahead and reload it really quick and then restart. I'm so sorry, but I want to make sure you actually see. I'll talk to it in the meantime anyway, while I reload and reshare my screen. So my goal that I wanted to talk and share with you as part of this presentation was launching a company. And so what that screen was showing, which I'll show you again in just a second, was the logo Nomi, the Nomi logo, sorry. And for me, this idea of launching a company was something that I had years and years and years ago. All right, let's try this again. Sorry, guys. Give me a thumbs up or a okay if my screen is sharing again. Yeah, we good? Yes, thank you. Appreciate it, David. So I had a goal. I knew I wanted to start a company. I had a couple of ideas, and then that idea started to crystallize over time. And I remember my mom, and she was always a big inspiration for me. She actually left her job and became an entrepreneur at the age of 37. She had 3 kids. She took out a big loan And I was super inspired by her journey. And I was trying to do the same thing. I also had 2 kids. I was our family's breadwinner. I had a tremendous amount on my plate, but I started thinking about the concept of Nomi, early on in my career. And if anybody wants to take a guess how long I kind of hedged and hawed and like thought about this idea until I took action, give me a thought. How many years do you think it took until I actually found the courage to take action? So that between idea and action. Any ideas? Let's see in the chat. 2 years, nope, more. 10 years, you're closer. It's actually a little bit less. So that's that. David, you've been around, you know exactly how long these things take for entrepreneurs. Took me 9 years just to hit the start button. So 9 years of thinking about it, of having an idea, of building up, talking to people about it. And for me, one of the biggest catalysts for actually launching the company was as my kids got older, my daughter, who's also a bit spunky and a little bit entrepreneurial, I think I've spoken about her with the witty groups before. She actually at some point was like, when are you going to just do it? And I thought, wow, somebody's holding me accountable and it's my own child. It is time for me to actually take that leap and find the courage to take action. And so what the process of change teaches us is that you may not be ready to take action. And change is a process. You have an idea, and this is intended to be like action. Yes, action. So from the time you have the idea and when you take action, a lot of things are changing in your psychology. A lot of things are changing in your environment. And what happens to a lot of us is that when you fail to reach that goal, or even when you fail to kick off and take action, you might feel demoralized or defeated. You might feel it's your fault. You might engage in negative self-talk or believe you're not strong enough. You lack willpower. You don't have enough self-control. This is true for any type of goal. I know we talk about it a lot, and it's become somewhat destigmatized to talk about that negative self-talk and willpower and self-control. For whatever reason, women and weight have been something where we talk about this all the time, openly in forums. And what I learned as I got into the science of change and learned about it from Meg is that this science is true for every goal. It actually comes from the science of addiction. And what these scientists learned, and I'll talk about them in a moment, but what we learned about the science of addiction is that you have to recognize that sometimes it's not you that's failing at the goal, it's the program. And that change requires a meeting of your behavior and your internal psychology. So as it relates to financial wellness and financial planning, financial budgeting, your spending, all financial planners and advisors and those apps that you might use expect that you are at the stage of change where you are ready to take action. You're going to do this. You're going to create the budget. You're going to make the plan. You're going to adhere to all these goals. But most people, in fact, 80% of people, are not yet ready to take action. And so when you fail to stick to a new diet or a wellness regimen or a financial plan, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't do it. It might just mean that you're not ready to take action. Your past failure does not mean that you can't be successful. It might just mean you weren't ready. And so it's natural for everyone with every goal to move through different stages of change before you take action. When you're just thinking about the action, you're getting your brain ready for the action. Knowing which stage you're in is hugely important toward preparing for the change and supporting you so that you emerge successful and achieve that goal. So I remember when I was at one of the fintech companies I worked with at GemStep, I was the head of partnerships, and we went out to drinks one night, and our CEO was talking, and he said, sometimes you need what he called like this time lag, where you just need your brain to kind of like work. It's like kind of operating a little bit. That's why I love this image of like, this is like the image of process. You're kind of churning on an idea a little bit, and that takes a little bit of time. So let me move on to what the stages are. The science behind this concept that I'm sharing, that there's different stages of change, is called the trans-theoretical model of change. And I didn't want to put that whole big line long here. It's an academic concept. It comes from the science of addiction, as I said. And it comes from a book that was written by James and Janice Prochaska. The book is called Changing to Thrive: Using the Stages of Change to Overcome Top Threats to Your Health and Happiness. So you can see why I wanted everyone to kind of like root your goal and your idea in wellness, because when you think about the stages of change, they really help you achieve that wellness that you're aiming for. So we're going to go through and talk about these stages of change one by one. But before we do that, and I'll give you kind of concepts, we'll talk through each of them. Let me see if anyone has any questions or thoughts or reflections, if this helped anyone get unblocked in any way. What are you thinking about stages of change and what you've learned so far?
Can we just talk?
You can absolutely.
This is Janelle Carlson. I love this because I love the psychology of it, and you're making me feel so much more validated that I'm not at fault for taking a long time. So this is really great, and I appreciate all of it.
Amazing. Fantastic. And Christina's sharing, I can see the chat now, but intrigued to learn more about how it's rooted in wellness. And yeah, I think that when you kind of just think about human behavior and psychology, the purpose is help me feel better. And wellness is really just a relationship with your emotions and your feelings. And so that's kind of my interpretation of wellness. Is it can be totally similarly like interchangeable with well-being, feeling better, emotional relationship. To me, all of those are the same thing. It's wellness. And Christina, you're saying also it alleviates some of the pressure of the hustle culture and what success means in today's world. Totally agree. And I think success kind of implies if you take action, you have to achieve, you have to kind of get to that finish line. But what you don't talk about is what did it take to get to that? And what it takes to get to that is not only the waking up in the morning and going to the gym and doing my training regimen or changing my diet, or looking at my credit card balance, or looking at, where my investments are. It's actually kind of thinking through how ready am I to make change, and not holding yourself accountable to something you might not be ready for. All right, let's go into these stages, and hopefully, Lynn, it'll address some of your questions. So pre-contemplation. So let me define, I'm going to use some of how the Prochaskas, I hope I'm pronouncing their name properly, but who knows, how they actually define it. I read their book. I thought it was fascinating. I'm happy to put a reference here at the end or share it with you after. But pre-contemplation, and you'll see all of my imagery relates to financial wellness. Obviously, I have a bias. This is the wellness that I'm the most excited about and what this session is about. But pre-contemplation means that you might not feel that the change is needed, and you really have no intention of making changes to tackle your goal. You're just kind of oblivious. You're not even contemplating yet. So 80% of people are at some stage where they're not even planning action, and just identifying a stage you're in or a stage you were at before is a huge step. So pre-contemplation, the imagery I'm raising here is, you might be spending a whole lot of money. You have no intention of making any changes. You're not even thinking about it. You don't even have a goal in mind. You're kind of oblivious and you're not contemplating yet. You're kind of just living your life. You haven't raised awareness to the fact that a change is needed. So this is kind of the pre-change. You're not contemplating yet. Okay, we're going to move on. And please interrupt, ask questions, chat whenever you want. So contemplation is the next stage. So at the contemplation stage, you might start to feel like some changes are needed, but you're not planning on doing anything anytime soon. You might be getting ready or more ready, but you kind of view the change as something you might want to do off into the future. You're not changing any behaviors just yet. So maybe you were kind of, spending a lot of money, or you were doing a lot of travel, you were going to the spa, going to nice restaurants. You're still doing all of those things, but something in your brain has triggered where it's like an awareness raising of, I'm starting to contemplate that I might need to make a change at some point in the future. So for me, and I'm happy to listen to others, where we think about pre-contemplation and contemplation, like take a moment and think about the goal that you had in mind when we shared the wellness wheel. And think about, do either of these resonate? Maybe you've already passed these stages, and I'll tell you about the other stages next. Or you might say, you know what, I'm in contemplation stage. I am not ready to change my behavior yet. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because frankly, I'm just not there. So for me, this is a very vulnerable share, given what I do for a living. So I would say for years and years and years, I've been in contemplation stage about whether I want to work with a financial advisor. It is something that is something I'm incredibly familiar with. I know a lot about it. I would say I'm somewhere between contemplation and preparation, which is the next stage. I'm not sure if I'm ready to make a behavior change. There's a lot of kind of variables in my brain that I'm still chewing on. I'm still kind of thinking about. Anyone want to talk anything about their contemplation or pre-contemplation stage, or shall we keep going on to preparation? All right, we'll keep going and feel free to interrupt me. The next stage of behavior change is preparation. At this stage, you actually feel like change is needed and you're getting ready to take action. You're preparing for the action change. At this stage, let's say your goal was physical fitness. You might not have started going to the gym, but you started shopping around to see how much a gym membership is. You might have gone over to your local, store and picked up a couple of gym outfits. You're getting ready to take the action. You might not even know some of the actions you need to take. And for different goals, especially financial goals, that's what trips a lot of people up. You're preparing, you want to do the right thing, you want to make a change, but you're really not sure what action to take. And so the types of tasks that go into preparation are researching. You can kind of go onto your search engine, you can talk to your friends, you go and have a couple of exploratory meetings. So exploring is the next task that you might do in preparation stage. You have discussions. You're trying to learn, you're trying to figure out, I'm ready for this change. What does action even mean? What does it look like? And the next type of task you might do in preparation is testing. You start testing things. You start testing what would change actually look like and feel like for me. So I'll give an example just as a venture-backed startup. For me, a lot of when I kind of looked at launching Nomi as a company, it started with researching. What do I need to know about what launching a company even means? And there's a lot of research that needs to be done with a lot of different audiences, including your family, including your potential customers, your investors, your partners, future employees. There's a lot of research that has to happen. The exploring is really important. What was critical for me was having the discussions around, what do I actually need in order to be fundraising worthy? If I'm talking to an investor, what are they holding me accountable to? What is it that I should be focused on and aiming at? And what does that look like? Show me a sample. Show me something that I need to do, because that's the preparation work I need to be doing right now. So preparation is a really important stage, and a huge critical part of preparation is asking yourself, do I know what actions need to be taken, or do I need to actually go and figure that out? And through research, exploring, testing, all of these things, do I know the action? Any questions on preparation? No. Okay, we're going to move on to action. All right, at this stage, You know what action is needed in your phase of change. You know you're ready for this behavior change. You've researched it. You kind of had taken your time along your journey. And now you are in the process of changing your behavior, or you've already even begun the process. You already got the gym membership and you started going. You went once. You're already in the action. If you are if we think about it as it relates to financial wellness, you might have actually started a new relationship with a financial advisor or planner or money coach. You have a new relationship with a bank that you're going to actually be working with. You know that you needed an insurance policy, so you reached out and started working with an insurance agent. You're actually taking the action. The action doesn't mean you necessarily stop there. There's 2 more stages, but the action is where the actual I'm doing the behavior change. This is there's build up, and then there's the doing, and that's what action's all about. And the doing could also have several phases, but we're just talking about behavior change here. So we're going to just categorize it as action. The next stage is maintenance. So you've taken action toward your change and you want to stay on track. So you've actually now chosen a financial advisor. Maybe you've opted in to work with a digital robo-advising tool or a financial planning or budgeting tool, or you've, kind of working on checking out your credit cards, or you're managing your spend. You've decided you want to auto invest, whatever it is, $200 a month into whatever retirement budget. This is maintenance. Maintenance is you took the action, stay on track. You've got to kind of stay on track. You might want to imagine how the scientists that created this for addiction, because addiction, the entire science of addiction is around behavior change. How do you create and define and structure behavior change? So I love it was actually Meg who translated that science into financial behavior change, which I think is beautiful. It's the exact same thing where you've kind of built up, you have to make a change, you get there, you're in maintenance, stay on track, know the track you're on. And frankly, that's what Nomi can help you do. I'm happy to offer at the end, we'll talk a little bit more about Nomi, but Nomi is a matter of helping you prepare, helping you get there, and helping you stay on track. It's also very much about knowing your track, knowing your rubric of accountability to help you stay on track. What does the action you want to be taking mean? And how are you making sure that you're staying within the rails of comfort and aligned with the goals that you have over time? So that's what maintenance is all about. Any questions? Okay, we'll move on. The last stage is termination. And so this one is obvious as you think about the science of addiction, is at some point, you're done, you're good, you moved on. This behavior change that you were kind of working up to and planning for and changing and preparing for and acting on and maintaining, it's gone. It's not even a goal anymore. This particular behavior change has lived its life. You terminate, you move on. So I could give you several examples as it relates to financial wellness. You're kind of building up to a behavior change, let's say to where you want to buy a house and save up for a mortgage. There's contemplation. Well, there's pre-contemplation and there's contemplation and there's preparation and then there's action. And there's a tremendous amount of research in that preparation stage. Then you get the mortgage. Then you have to maintain the mortgage and you got to pay the mortgage every month. And then at some point it just becomes auto, what's it called? You're kind of on automatic and that mortgage just gets paid. And it's like, you know what? I can drop that goal. Now it's time for me to move to the next goal. So those are the 6 stages of change. What I want to kind of pivot to and talk a little bit about is how do you move through the stages of change? And how do you find the right support to get you through those phases of change? I wonder if anybody wants to share an example before we talk about moving through the stages. And I can go back to the slide that actually shows the 6 stages of the goal that came to mind or a different goal that you want to talk about and how you've kind of experienced these 6 stages and have kind of moved on. And it's okay if not, nobody's forced. Okay, not seeing anybody. Let's go back. We can talk about how do you continue moving yourself through the stages, and then we can reflect a little bit on, is this science helpful? How is it helpful? What have you learned? How are you going to apply it? So that's kind of going to be the last step. And we only have one more slide. And I want to give an opportunity for everyone to share. Harini, you shared a link in the chat. Did you want to talk through it as well? If so, you might be on mute. Oh, can't unmute. Okay. Well, there's a great resource that Harini has shared with all of us, if we want to look at it. So let's talk a little bit about, you've identified a behavior change, you know it's important, and you want to actually move through the different stages of change. Maybe you've already done the work to identify for that goal that you kind of anchored at the beginning of our conversation. You might want to think about what stage are you in as you're going through the different process of change for that goal. So if you think, just kind of root back to that particular goal you thought about and think about what stage are you in for that goal. Now that you know what stage you're in, how do you move to the next one? So research shows that when you list out your pros and cons for each stage of change, you actually motivate yourself to make that behavior change. Research also shows that for every single con, you need 5 pros. The pros have to outweigh the cons by 5, at least 5. So if I was thinking about, do I want to launch a business? The pros are, different pros. Frankly, for cons, there's a huge list of cons. But the pros to me had much more weight. They were much more valuable to me. They were much more aligned to why I decided to make this huge behavior change in my life. So to identify pros, as you think about what pros do you have to motivate you to make the change, consider the impact that this particular change will have in different areas of your life. So think about, if you're going to make this change, like put yourself in future you's shoes. I think we did a whole session where we talked about future you. So put yourself in future you's shoes and imagine how your emotional well-being will improve when you make this change. And just sit on that for a moment. You might want to even write it down. Emotionally, how will you feel better when you make that change? Go to the next area of the wellness wheel. How will you socially feel better when you make this change? Will your social well-being be improved when you make the change? Next stage on the wellness wheel. How will your financial well-being be improved when you make this change? You might have some cons there too. You might have kind of a way that you have pros and cons in each of those different components of the wellness wheel, but it's a great framework for working through the pros and cons. You might want to think about, as we're just staying on the topic of social, think about how making this change will impact those around you. So for that goal that you anchored on and that one that you thought about at the beginning of our session, when you make that change, what impact is it going to have on your loved ones? What impact is it going to have on the people you care about most? What impact is it going to have on the people you work with, or that you study with, or volunteer with, or in your community? So on the next stage, what impact will this have on your physical well-being? Will it actually, I can tell you, launching a company has not been the best on my physical well-being, but it's been really good in some of the other areas of the wellness wheel. That is actually trade-offs that we make. And again, it's a weighting factor when you're kind of going through the phases of change. How is it going to impact your sense of purpose? That's a big one. And I think as we talk about achieving wellness, purpose, impact, meaning are things that we keep hearing again and again and again, that achieving wellness is very often linked with values, with purpose, impact, and meaning. So that's a really important one. Imagine yourself making this change and seeing how it impacts your own sense of purposefulness. Last is time management. And is it going to reduce complexity in your life? Is it going to add complexity in your life? How is making this change going to impact your time? Is that helpful? Okay. Let's talk about takeaways. Let's open it up a little bit and see if we can get some volunteers to share. I think that the primary session focus was recognize a goal and recognize that there is a process of change. You don't just, one day decide to become a rocket scientist. There is a process. You don't just one day decide to launch a company, to work with a financial advisor. There's usually a series of issues that happen that build up to a particular goal. So we talked about articulating and clarifying the goal, recognizing your change, thinking through pros and cons. And then the last one is engaging community and other support in order to, be your friends, be your pals, to be your support network as you go through change. I wonder if anybody wants to open up, and here is our opportunity within Witty to use each other as a boost as we work through the stages of change. Maybe you're struggling to find the pros. Maybe you're being bogged down with so many cons. You can't even think about, I can't even think about this change, but I know it's right for me. How can you get some help through the people that are here for you? That's what these communities are for. I'll pause there. I'm pretty good at talking over silence. So I'm gonna try to check myself and see if anyone wants to chime in. Don't be shy. If you're thinking about a change or working through a change, we're always changing. We're always dealing and juggling with multiple goals at one time.
Marla, how is this affected when change is thrust upon you? In my case, it was losing a job. So I have to take action whether I want to or not. But I can also think of losing a family member or other big life moments that can't always be anticipated and aren't necessarily always within our control.
That's such an excellent question. And I'll come back to this one. And let's just kind of go through that experience. Let's say it was out of your control and you lose your job. And at some point, you have change thrown upon you. This science is about behavior change on your part. You're forced into a behavior change. You used to wake up at 6, get dressed, go to the office, and you had a routine. Now you've got to make some change. That change entails behavior change on your part. And so what does that behavior change on your part look like? And so if you just lost your job, it might be, if you're contemplating or preparing for next steps after a job loss, pre-contemplation is like, I had no idea I'm going to make any change, so we're just going to squeeze back that one. But if you're contemplating or preparing, then you're kind of thinking about or even preparing for exactly what any other behavior change requires. You're networking, you're researching, you're checking available jobs, you're learning, you're getting out there, you're exploring alternative paths to income potentially. Like there's a million behavior changes that you might make and you're not yet ready for action maybe, but the behavior change is what's my next step? What is it that I'm actually going to do? You could say the same for a loss in the family. Something happens to you. You were kind of at a phase where you were taking care of a loved one in their old age or on the phone every day with them. And a change is thrust upon you that it requires of you a very uncomfortable behavior change potentially. But it requires that you start to consider the catalyst is out of your hands, but your reaction is still a behavior change. And your reaction is something that's totally in your control. And your reaction might have its own phases of change. Does that help? I think that was Lynn, right? Does that kind of help explain how you might think about this science in that way?
Yes, that is very helpful. Thank you.
And I think just like I've experienced it, frankly, for myself and my husband, where we've lost a job, and you might not be ready on the immediate next day to get out there and start sending in resumes. You might not be at that phase of change that it feels comfortable for you to do that. You might be feeling emotionally burned and scarred and, hurt. You might also be fed up. I know that happens a lot. And you might not be, the first thing you want to do is not try to throw yourself back into the ring you were thrown out of. And so you might want to look for a new ring and figure out, what is my ring? Who do I want to go and pour my resource and time and energy into that's going to be respectful and acknowledge the value that I bring into this new environment? And that requires research preparation before you take action. So I think that's a really, really good example of how you might use the science in those situations where it's thrust upon you, and just look at what's under your control, recognize where you are, and give yourself a little bit of self-compassion. Think through the pros and cons. If you're not going to put the resumes out there today, what are you giving up? What are the trade-offs you're making? What are the things you're going to be doing instead? Maybe you need to take some time and focus on your physical health and your mental health, and give yourself self-compassion to allow for that. That's okay. That's a good big pro. Mental health and physical health are not things that I think should be always tucked away and say, we'll deal with those later. No, those are really important. Those are definite pros that need more voice, I think, and support in this world, in our society, at least. And engaging community is really important. Any other shares? And then, happy to share a couple of resources from Nomi and take any questions. Okay. Well, we will move on. I'm actually going to offer you a new resource. I'm going to put it here in the app. Witty is an incredible partner, and we've been building up to our product launch, and we're now in our very quiet, kind of beta product launch. You can go in and try Nomi right now, the product. It's kind of the stage beyond this financial personality quiz at nomiapp.com. And it will actually help you go through your own self-discovery of what are your values, what are your goals, what are the things you want to add to your life, subtract from your life. We do use the trans-theoretical model of change. We call it TTM because that's a mouthful. In the app itself, we are basically automating a lot of this behavioral psychology in a way that helps you work through behavior change with the purpose of find financial wellness, make decisions that help you find the financial future that you aspire to, that you're aiming for, help you find the right products and the right partners, and help you build confidence so that when you're talking to these financial providers, you are standing with solid footing on who you are and what matters to you. I know my values, I know my goals, I know my money history and my attitudes, I know my money psychology, I know my attitudes about risk. Now I need you, provider X, whoever that is, to help me. And that's what Nomi's all about. It's about being known, helping you know yourself and helping others know you so that you can make better financial choices in your life and achieve your goals and aspirations. Very, very open to everyone. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. Please ask me any questions you have. Definitely a very warm, hopeful request here to try Nomi and let me know what you think.